Hello, I'm Megan, aka Just Run It, and this is Megan's Monday Musings. I hope you're having a great Monday, as always. And today I'm going to talk about a few tips and tricks on how I count progress while I'm knitting on a project. So I recently came to the conclusion that I'm primarily a monogamous knitter because I like to be able to pick up a project and know exactly where I'm at and what I should be doing. And my mental capacity to be able to do that for multiple projects is very limited. And so I like to know where I'm at and keep that anxiety down. And so these are my tips and tricks on how I keep track of where I am in a pattern. So I hope you're all enjoying the That's a Rapazoid KAL. And I'm really enjoying the Rapazoid. I finished the main body, so the trapezoid shaped increasing wedge. There's the armholes. So it's a very quick squishy knit because it's that yarn held together. And I talked last week about how I appreciated the color graduation through. This is where I provisionally cast on, so that'll get ripped out once I start putting around. And here's where I provisionally bound off. So that was a Megan's Monday Musing, setting aside stitches with a provisional bind off. That's just using spare yarn and binding off with it to set those stitches aside. And I'm now on to the collar, which I'm alternating absolutely loving this super poppy color. And then sometimes I pick it up and I'm like, is it too much? But I think that the whole muchness of this project, it matches it. So it's more drama option, and all of the styling options will make it over the top. But okay. So my tips and tricks for keeping track of where you are in a pattern. I'm first going to talk about like if you're going to be doing something every few rows. And so if you're, for example, decreasing on a sleeve or you're increasing in a shawl, I use these bulb stitch markers to mark where things have happened. So if you're knitting the pattern, you'll know I'm making these numbers up that they don't reflect the pattern, but I don't want to give away the pattern. So if I were increasing every 4 rows, in garter, it's really easy to see where you're at because you get that garter ridge every 2 rows, there and back. And so I use these bulb stitch markers. I got this set of 750 of them, 12 different colors, however many that is. I'm not doing the quick math in my head right now. On Amazon for next to nothing. I think it was, even with the upcharge for Amazon Prime, it was like $8 for that many of them. So I use them with, non-sparingly throughout all of my knitting. So I put a stitch marker in every increase. So the increase that's done in this pattern is kind of invisible because you get that purl bump. And so just to remind myself that how many rows, so I said 4, so I would be looking for 2 purl ridges in between each, and then look down below and see, okay, there's been 2 purl ridges, and now it's time for me to increase. Another way, so that's kind of the vertical way of keeping track of it. Another way that you can horizontally keep track of it, and it's a bad example because the collar doesn't increase. But if you have a, say I was increasing right here as you were on the trapezoid part, the main body part, I would put a stitch marker after I did that first increase, and then I could easily count how many increases I'd done. So here I could count that I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, or just counting the stitches on the needle, I could go, okay, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 increases because the stitches would be increasing on this side in between the end of the row and the locking stitch marker there. And so that works with sleeves as well, right? So if I have to do 7 decreases, I would make sure that there were, after I did that first one, There were 7 stitches in between the locking stitch marker and the beginning of the round. And then as those decreased away, I would get down to being like, okay, I'm almost done. So that's kind of a horizontal with stitches on the needles way to keep track. Similarly, with those same locking stitch markers. So I'm doing, marking my progress here on the side. If I knew that I was going to have to increase, or not increase, if I knew I was going to have to knit 8 5-row increments, I would start out with a locking stitch marker with 7 extra stitch markers here. And every time I got to another 5 rows done, I would take it off and put it up there. And then by the time I got, so here's my, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then my 8th one. Once I place that one, I'll know that I've done all of the rows that I am supposed to do. And that can be very motivating and very fun, right? Because it's a physical way of seeing your progress that isn't just inches and inches of knitting. Which is, again, another way. This is actually counting your progress just to show progress. There's all of those nice little lobster clasp progress keepers that you can put on, like, you know, so if I had put one on yesterday, it would probably be down in here, and I could see that I had added this much since I had last moved that progress marker. And it kind of helps you feel like you've got some velocity and you've made some progress. The last counting mechanism that I'm going to mention, or actually I've got 2, sorry, I misspoke. I got this as part of a kit this past year. It's a dial where every row you can change. So I've done 7 5 increments here, and you can see I'm on 35. So every row you can turn that dial and increase it. And that'll help you, especially if it's not something like garter where you're doing the same thing over and over again, but you're actually following a chart that has rows. That can be helpful. There are other patterns that have this built in. So checklist patterns. I know Corey iRockKnits has checklist patterns where you do a row and there is actually physically a box on your printed pattern that you have completed that row. And that can help you keep track of where you are and be able to pick up and know exactly where you're supposed to be in the pattern. Similarly, you can do tallies on a piece of paper. I know I've seen a lot of people that just keep a pin and do the tallying on a piece of paper. And as well as if you're an electronic person, there are PDF tools where you can mark things as done on it. I tend to print patterns just so that I don't get stranded somewhere where my phone is out of battery, or I generally don't not have my phone, but in the off chance that I did, it kind of travels around with the project. The pattern travels along with the project so that I can look at it at any time, and I'll kind of make marks to say I'm done with this section. But if you are really electronic, there's also the option now in Ravelry. So I have in the past not put a ton of notes on Ravelry, specifically with designs, or because I don't want to give away the pattern for other people. Give away a paid for pattern, some instructions from it. There is an option now in Ravelry for private notes. So you can keep those notes on your project page to tell you where you are, what you've done, how many repeats you decided to do, for example, and only you can see those. Those aren't everybody's. It's a balance, I would say, because sometimes those notes can be extremely helpful if you are out there looking at pattern projects to do the pattern because you've run into problems or whatnot. But in general, if you're going to copy and paste an instruction or something that is key and pivotal to the pattern, I would say do that in a private note versus a public note. So those are a few tips and tricks, using markers, keeping track of your status, some tools that you can use to motivate yourself and to make some progress. I hope you are all feeling very encouraged to join the KAL. the That's a Rapazoid KAL. I am very much looking forward to. I've got some a little bit of the collar left, and then you will see me here at the end. I'll post some in progress pictures of the, there's the angle, of the That's a Rapazoid, but it's, you know, now mid-February, and this is a February and March KAL, so you've still got plenty of time. Scraptastic doesn't have to be something that you go out and buy a lot of yarn for if you've got some leftover fingering. I've been loving all of the progress that everybody has posted, and feel free to chime in if you've got something that you use to make sure that you are keeping track of where you are in your project. Please comment and share the knowledge. Bye, Ufta.